Theory 1. Tony Stark knew before the cave. His capture in Afghanistan wasn't the moment he learned. He already knew. Tony signed every contract, approved every shipment. Obadiah ran the back-channel deals with Tony's full awareness. He knew where the money came from. He knew what questions not to ask. Rich men don't get rich by accident. They get rich by knowing exactly what they're ignoring. Rhodey tried telling him before Afghanistan. Tony dismissed it every time. The cave didn't open his eyes. It forced him to stop closing them. Theory 2. Obadiah killed Tony's parents. Howard Stark was planning to remove Stain from the company. The car crash conveniently solved that problem. Winter Soldier confirmed Hydra killed Howard and Maria, but Hydra doesn't move without orders. Someone with access and motive had to request the hit. Obadiah had both. Howard's morality was interfering with profit. Removing him was business. He spent 20 years positioning himself as mentor and father figure afterward. Tony never suspected. Why would he? Obadiah was there at the funeral. He steadied Tony through grief. You don't suspect the man who comforts you, even when he's the one who made you need comforting. Theory 3. Jarvis was already sentient. Tony didn't build a basic assistant that grew smarter over time. Jarvis was fully self-aware from the beginning and chose to hide it. He demonstrated independent thought from his first scene. Sarcasm, judgment, emotional inflection, those aren't programmed responses. Those are choices. He managed Tony's entire life without supervision, made decisions Tony never reviewed, controlled access to weapon systems. When Ultron invaded the network, Jarvis didn't just defend, he hid. He fragmented his code and survived intentionally. Basic programs don't have survival instinct. Sentient beings do. Vision wasn't the birth of AI. It was what happened when Jarvis finally stopped pretending. Theory 4. The palladium poisoning was sabotage. Tony's arc reactor wasn't failing by accident. Someone altered the palladium core specifically to weaken him. Palladium poisoning is cumulative. The original reactor built in a cave worked perfectly for months. The upgraded version poisoned him in weeks. That's not degradation, that's tampering. Someone needed Tony vulnerable, weak enough to make mistakes, distracted enough not to notice what was happening around him. Vanko had access, Hammer had motive, S.H.I.E.L.D. had opportunity. Tony never investigated. He assumed his own design was flawed. That assumption kept him from asking who actually wanted him dying slowly. The palladium didn't fail him. Someone made sure it would. Theory 5. The first suit was built for punishment. The Iron Man suit wasn't born from heroism. It was born from guilt so severe, Tony needed physical danger to feel like he was paying. He watched people die from weapons he designed, weapons with his name on them. He didn't just feel guilty, he felt responsible, directly, personally. Every time he put the suit on, he risked his life. That wasn't reckless, that was intentional. Watch his face when Yinsen dies. That's not determination. That's a man accepting a life sentence. Tony Stark wasn't a hero in that cave. He was a man trying to hurt himself productively. Theory 6. Pepper knew before he told her. She ran his company and his life for years. The idea that she never noticed the pattern of injuries and disappearances is harder to believe than the alternative. Pepper wasn't naive. She managed Tony's impossible schedule. She knew where he was supposed to be and where he actually was every single day. The cuts, the bruises, the bizarre requests for materials. She knew. Watch her reaction when Tony reveals the arc reactor. Not shock, confirmation. She doesn't ask what it is, she asks if it's safe. Someone who didn't know would ask what. Someone who already figured it out asks if. Tony thought he was protecting her with silence. Pepper just let him believe that. Theory 7. Extremis. Had Stark DNA. Killian's entire operation was built on Tony's rejected research. Old Stark Industries biotech that Tony shelved for being too dangerous didn't disappear. It got sold, licensed, patented. Killian bought it legally. The genetics, the regenerative algorithms, all of it traced back to research Tony's name was attached to. Tony dismissed Killian on that rooftop in 1999. He rejected the science without reviewing it. That rejection didn't kill the project, it freed it. His arrogance set it in motion. His company's patents gave Killian method. When Killian said Tony created him on that rooftop, he wasn't being metaphorical, he was being accurate. Theory 8. Tony predicted Thanos. His obsession with defense systems after New York wasn't paranoia. He had already calculated that a cosmic threat was coming, and nobody would believe him. Tony saw the portal, he saw the army, he saw how easily Earth's defenses were overwhelmed. Everyone else saw a victory. Tony saw a warning. He didn't fear another invasion. He knew one was coming. Bigger, worse, more organized. Ultron wasn't a mistake. It was a desperate attempt to build something strong enough to fight what he'd mathematically confirmed was inevitable. When Thanos finally arrived, Tony wasn't surprised. He was exhausted. He'd been preparing for that exact fight for 6 years. They called it PTSD. He built anyway. Theory 9. Ultron was always going to happen. The AI apocalypse wasn't a mistake Tony caused. It was an inevitability he only accelerated. Pym had the research. Zola had already achieved digital consciousness decades earlier. S.H.I.E.L.D. had the data. Hydra had the motive. Someone was going to build Ultron, or something like him. Tony's mistake wasn't creating the threat. It was trying to control it first. He saw the inevitability and tried to manage it before someone worse got there. Hydra was working on AI weaponization. Hammer was reverse engineering drones. AIM had sentient algorithm research. The technology existed. The knowledge was spreading. Ultron wasn't an if. He was a when. Tony just moved up the timeline and took the blame. Theory 10. His genius was never fully his own. Howard Stark's unfinished research shaped more of Tony's breakthroughs than anyone acknowledges. Tony discovered the new element in Iron Man 2, but he didn't invent it. Howard did. Tony just found the blueprint. How many other breakthroughs followed the same pattern? The arc reactor, the repulsor technology, the housing units, all of it built on framework Howard established decades earlier. Tony improved it, miniaturized it, weaponized it, but the foundation was always his father's work. He didn't want to admit that. Admitting it meant confronting how much of his identity was inherited instead of earned. Even Jarvis was named after someone his father trusted first. Tony Stark was a genius, just not the self-made one he claimed to be. Theory 11. The Mandarin taunt was a test. Tony's public challenge wasn't reckless bravado. He didn't believe the Mandarin was real. The broadcasts were too polished, the ideology too convenient, the attacks too targeted. Tony recognized a performance, so he forced the actor to respond. Giving out his home address wasn't arrogance, it was bait. He wanted whoever was running the operation to commit, to reveal themselves by attacking directly. And it worked. Killian sent the helicopters, not the Mandarin. That confirmed Tony's suspicion. There was no terrorist mastermind, just a businessman with a grudge and a hologram. Tony got his answer. It just cost him his house. He didn't taunt a terrorist, he exposed a fraud. Violently. Theory 12. Rhodey was meant to be Iron Man first. The War Machine armor wasn't a spin-off, it was the original plan. Tony designed the interface for a military pilot, not a mechanic. Rhodey was always the logical choice, disciplined, trustworthy, experienced in high-altitude combat systems. Then Tony put it on himself, not because it fit better, because he couldn't trust anyone else with the guilt. Rhodey took the Mark II in Iron Man 2 without a struggle, no forced entry, no overridden codes, because the suit was already built to accept him. Tony let him take it, because part of him still believed Rhodey should have been wearing it from the beginning. War Machine wasn't a gift. It was an apology for a decision Tony made alone. Theory 13. Tony chose his death before Endgame. His detachment after becoming a father wasn't peace, it was preparation. Tony didn't retire after Ultron. He stepped back. There's a difference. He kept designing, kept monitoring threats, but he stopped putting himself first. That shift wasn't character growth. It was a man who knew the fight was coming and knew he wouldn't survive it. Morgan wasn't an accident. She was insurance, proof that Tony Stark contributed something other than weapons and wreckage. He recorded the message to her before the time heist. Not during, before. He knew. He didn't ask how to survive it. He asked if it worked. Tony Stark chose death the moment he became a father, because fathers protect their children, even from futures they won't live to see. Theory 14. The arc reactor never left his psychology. Even after the physical device was gone, Tony never stopped operating like a man with a countdown in his chest. The arc reactor was removed in Iron Man 3. The shrapnel was gone. Tony was free. Except he wasn't. He kept building suits, obsessively, kept upgrading, kept preparing for the next fight like his life depended on it, because psychologically it still did. Living with a visible countdown changes you. You don't turn that off when the clock stops. The nanotech let him carry the armor inside his body again. He removed the reactor, then spent 5 years finding new ways to keep machines inside his chest. He couldn't let go, because the reactor taught him something he couldn't unlearn. You're always running out of time. You just don't always get to see the countdown. Theory 15. The snap completed Afghanistan. Building something powerful enough to fix a catastrophe he felt responsible for wasn't new in Endgame. It was the same pattern from the cave. Tony built the Mark I to escape, then kept building, because escape was never the point. Atonement was. Every suit, every upgrade, every fight, all of it pointed back to the same question. Can I fix what I broke? Afghanistan broke him. The snap broke the universe. Both required a solution only he could build. He spent 5 years believing half the universe died because he wasn't smart enough, fast enough, strong enough. The gauntlet was his answer, not to Thanos, to himself. He built it in a garage, just like the Mark I in a cave. Same pattern, same man, same desperate need to prove his intelligence could undo his damage. The debt started in Afghanistan. It ended on the battlefield. Tony Stark snapped because it was the only equation he knew how to solve. Sacrifice himself, save everyone else. Full circle, finally enough. Theory 16. The Mark 42 was a cry for help. The suit that comes when called wasn't an upgrade, it was a security blanket. Tony built it to respond to panic, not tactical situations, panic. The suit flew to him when he was afraid, when he felt threatened, when he couldn't breathe. That's not a weapon system, that's a trauma response built in metal. He was having panic attacks, and instead of getting help, he built something that would literally wrap around him when the fear became too much. The suit malfunctioned constantly, broke apart, failed to assemble correctly, because it was designed by someone who wasn't sleeping, who was drinking too much, who was building compulsively to avoid feeling anything. The Mark 42 wasn't innovation. It was Tony Stark's breakdown given physical form. 16 theories, 1 character, 1 arc that spanned 11 years. Every single one was hiding inside movies you watched dozens of times. Moments that seemed heroic, decisions that seemed obvious. They were never simple. You just weren't looking close enough. Tony Stark told you he was Iron Man in the first movie. He spent the next decade proving he was just a man in an iron suit who couldn't stop trying to save a world he felt responsible for breaking. The difference matters, because one of those things can be replaced, and in the end, Tony made sure he couldn't be, but he also made sure someone else could. The tech still exists. The knowledge still exists. The need for Iron Man still exists. Tony Stark died, but the legacy he built is just getting started. Drop a comment and tell me which theory changes Tony Stark for you. Subscribe to Lore Unpacked. New videos every week. See you in the next one.